A giant is holding a door shut while an army of the dead tears him apart from the other side. His name is Hodor, the only word he has ever been able to say, and as the wights claw through the wood and rip into his body, a girl named Meera screams the same command over and over. Hold the door. Hold the door. Behind them, in a vision of the past, a young stableboy collapses in a seizure. His eyes rolled white, his mouth echoing words he cannot understand. Hold the door. Hold the door. Hold the door. Hodor. Hodor. The phrase collapses into a name. The name collapses into a death sentence, and the internet wept, because the show had finally explained the saddest mystery in its world, where Hodor's name came from. Most people walked away from that scene with one takeaway. It was about the door, a clever, devastating bit of wordplay. Hold the door becomes Hodor, case closed. But that reading skips the most horrifying part of what you just watched, because the name is not the tragedy, the name is the surface. Underneath it is something far darker, a crime with a victim, a perpetrator, and a sentence served across an entire lifetime. And the perpetrator is one of the heroes of the show. Let's start with the obvious, because the obvious is genuinely brilliant. For 6 seasons, Hodor was the show's gentle giant, 7 feet of muscle who could only ever say one nonsense word. Fans speculated for years. Maybe Hodor was a corruption of a real name. Maybe he'd suffered an accident. The most popular theory was that, like Bran, Hodor was a warg, that he'd been trapped inside an animal's mind when it died, and the shock had broken him. That theory was wrong. The truth was a closed time loop. In the cave, Bran Stark, now training as the next three-eyed raven, is deep in a vision of Winterfell's past, watching a young, articulate stableboy named Willis with a normal life ahead of him. And then in the present, the army of the dead breaks through, and Meera needs Hodor to carry Bran to safety. Bran, still locked in the vision of the past, wargs into the body of the present-day Hodor without leaving the past. For one impossible moment, Bran is connected to both Hodors at once, the broken giant in the present and the whole boy in the past, and the trauma of the present floods backward through the link. Young Willis seizes. He hears Meera's screams bleeding in from decades in the future, and he witnesses, in that instant, the moment of his own death, his body being torn apart at a door he will not reach for another 40 years. The wordplay is real. The horror is real. As a piece of construction, it is one of the finest gut punches the series ever built. But the door is where most viewers stop, and stopping there means missing the actual crime. The detail. Everyone rushes past, watch the scene again. Not the giant at the door, but the boy on the ground. Because here is the part the "isn't the wordplay clever" reaction walks straight past. The seizure does not just give Willis a word, it takes everything else away. Before Bran touches his mind, Willis is a complete human being. The show is explicit about this. In Bran's vision, Willis is a cheerful, talkative stableboy. He helps Lyanna Stark down from her horse. He trades words with the young Starks. He has a full range of speech and thought and a whole future in front of him. He is, by every measure, a normal young man. And then a boy who has not even been born yet reaches across 40 years of time and erases him, not kills him, erases him. After the seizure, Willis is gone. What remains is a shell of the man he once was, capable of carrying things, capable of following simple commands, capable of saying exactly one word for the rest of his life. The person, the mind, the speech, the future, the name his mother gave him, is deleted. The body keeps walking around for 4 more decades, a living monument to a murder that left the corpse breathing. Now let's be precise about what the show actually establishes, because this is where casual takes get sloppy. The fact is not in dispute. Bran's warg is the direct cause of Willis's shattering. The show is explicit about that chain of events. What the show leaves open, and what I'd argue rather than assert, is the moral weight of it. You can read Bran as an innocent boy who triggered a catastrophe he never chose, or you can read him as someone who consumed a whole human life to save his own. The episode gives you the causation as fact, and hands you the blame as a question. But take even the most generous reading, Bran as pure accident, zero intent, and the horror does not shrink, because the outcome is identical either way. A complete human being was hollowed into a tool, years before he was born, before he could understand it, before there was even a reason for it yet. Whether you call that a crime or a tragedy, Willis is just as gone. Now we'll sit with the timeline because the timeline is what turns this from a sad death into a 40-year sentence. Wylis is broken as a young man. The Battle of the Door, the moment he actually dies holding it, happens decades later, which means the trauma did not strike him at the moment of death. It struck him at the beginning of his adult life, and then forced him to live every single day after that as a hollowed-out shell, carrying the imprint of a death that had not happened yet. Think about what that actually means. For 40 years, this man could only say, Hodor. For 40 years, the people of Winterfell saw a simple-minded giant and set him to work in the stables, never knowing that the word he repeated was the sound of his own future murder, looping endlessly through a mind that had been shattered to make room for it. He was not born this way, he was made this way, and he was made this way to serve a single function that would not come due for 4 decades, to hold one door, one time, so that the boy who broke him could escape. This is the cruelty of the closed loop. The original three-eyed raven told Bran the rule of this world. The past is already written. The ink is dry. Bran cannot change the past. He can only fulfill it. Which means there was never a version of events where Wylis grew up whole. There was never a timeline where he kept his mind, married, lived a full life. The moment he was born, his entire existence had already been spent, budgeted, in advance, as fuel for 90 seconds of someone else's survival. Wylis never had a life. He had a countdown. And every Hodor was the clock. To understand how deliberate this horror is, we have to leave the show and open George R.R. Martin's pages, because this is one of the rare moments where the author handed the show his ending personally. This twist did not originate with the showrunners. Martin told them the secret of Hodor's name years in advance, so the show could plant it before the books arrived. So the bootstrap paradox, the boy broken by a future that depends on him being broken, is not a TV invention. It is the author's design. And one detail from the lore sharpens the blade. In the novels, Hodor's real name is not Wylis, it is Walder. A small change for the show, but it means that somewhere in Martin's pages there is a mother who named a son Walder and watched him reduced to a single syllable, never knowing why. Martin has confirmed Hodor's fate plays out in the books, though he warned the mechanics will differ. In his version it's less hold the door as a physical act and more hold the passage, defend it. The exact wording may change. The crime does not. A boy reaches back through time and spends a whole human life to buy himself an escape. What the scene is actually about. So if it isn't about the door, what is it about? It is about the price of Bran's power, and the fact that an innocent paid it in full. The show spent its final seasons building Bran into something inhuman, the three-eyed raven, a being who could see all of time and feel almost none of it. Fans argued endlessly about whether Bran was a hero, a tool, or something colder. This scene is where that argument starts. The first concrete cost of his ascension we ever witness is the destruction of a completely innocent man who never asked to be part of any of it. Hodor did not choose to serve a prophecy. He did not volunteer his mind. He was conscripted, retroactively, before birth, without consent, into a destiny that used him up and discarded him at a door. And the boy who triggered it was, at that moment, a frightened child trying to survive. There is no villain here twirling a moustache. That is what makes it unbearable. The most generous reading of Bran and the darkest fact about his power are the same event. And the show never tells you which one to land on. It just makes you watch the cost. Hold the door is what the scene says. What the scene means is that the magic at the heart of this story does not run on nothing. It runs on people. And the first bill came due for a stableboy named Wylis, who paid with his entire life for a war he would never understand, fought by people who would never know his real name. The door was never the tragedy. The door was the receipt. So here is the question worth leaving below. When Bran shattered Wylis's mind across 40 years of time, was it an accident? A frightened boy reaching for the only escape he had, with no idea what his power would cost? Was it always going to happen? A closed loop with no first draft, a life that was spent before it was ever lived, and no choice for anyone involved? Or is it the show quietly seeding the truth about Bran Stark, that the boy who would become the cold, all-seeing king began his rise with the destruction of an innocent man and never once spoke his name again? Everyone remembers the door. Almost no one remembers his name. It was Wylis, and he never had a chance. Drop your verdict in the comments.